Hi, I'm JJ Conway, and I help hardworking women and a few good men build financial confidence and take ownership of their financial future. I'm cheering you on with education on financial literacy, smart investments, and passive income streams. Welcome to Ladies of Wealth. We are going to get right into our questions. Let me call up the first question. Some of these aren't necessarily 100% aligned with wealth building, but I think you're going to really enjoy them. And the thing is, for me, anything that impacts our emotional state impacts our wealth. Okay. If you are curious about my shirt, I'm going to talk about what this shirt represents at the end. We're going to do a little bit of a Black History Month spotlight, and we're going to talk about Girl Trek. Okay. Oh, this breaks my heart too. This really does break my heart. Okay. My boyfriend wants a church wedding, but not a legal wedding. Okay. And so I'm going to I'm going to skip some of the particulars. Okay. If you are dating somebody, usually what happens is they don't want to get married, period. You want to get married, they don't. They pretend they want to get married so they can get you in. But then as time goes on, 1 year turns to 5 years, turns to 10 years, you begin to realize these people don't want to get married. And if I want to get married, I got to move on and find somebody who does, because I'm not getting any younger. Okay. And so, and that's the situation that we normally have. But in this one, the individual has the boyfriend that's like, I want to go and have a church wedding with the big dress and the big party and all that stuff, but I don't want to have the legal wedding. And so, I'm going to be upfront with y'all. When I first saw that, I said, uh-oh, this guy already married. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about this from a financial standpoint. But first, let's talk about some reasons why you might be dating somebody who wants to have the big party, the big display, but they don't want to actually go down to the courthouse, sign the marriage license, and be officially married. Now, in some places that you live, you don't have to be legal to be considered married, right? Like in some places you live, there's common law marriage where you live with them long enough, and it can be either 7 years to 10 years to 20 years. I think in some parts of Canada it's like 3 years. Different parts of the world have different standards on that. And if you live with somebody long enough, then for the purposes of the law and inheritance and things like that, you could be considered married. But that's not the same as actually being married. So if that's important to you to have things to pass on to heirs, or if it's important to you that your children have a legacy with their father or mother, in whichever situation you're in, you want to make sure you lock that down with paperwork. Okay. And so, what a lot of people who've never been married before don't realize is that you don't just go down to the street and go down to the Justice of the Peace and show up on the courthouse steps and get married. Okay. Now, if you're in Vegas, you do, but there is still a little bit of a process there. Okay. It's a little easier in Vegas and some places like that, but there's still a process. I know, because I was going to get married in Vegas when I get remarried when I got married the second time. So there's still a process. You don't just show up drunk and get married. It's not like that anymore. So if somebody is telling you they don't want to get married, they don't want to get married through the legal system. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but chances are they're not on the up and up. Okay. So let's look at some of the reasons why somebody might say something like that. Okay. Especially if this person wants to have you stay home and rear the children, or if this person wants you all to buy property and things like that together, like you're going to be commingled on paper in other areas, but you're not going to be commingled on paper in the one that really matters when it comes to divorce, death of a spouse, even sickness of a spouse. Now, look, I know it sounds pessimistic for me to be like, you need to lock that stuff down, so if he leaves you or cheats on you, you have legal recourse, right? But that's not the only reason that marriage protects you. Whether you're a man or a woman, marriage protects you in certain ways, because if he goes into the hospital, if he goes into the hospital, they don't have to recognize you as being able to be there and be in there in the ICU and all that stuff unless you're married. Okay. Now they could create paperwork and they can give you durable power of attorney and power of attorney and all those things, living will, all those things. There's nuances. We talked about that on a previous podcast, the differences between those things, right? They could do that. But if they're not willing to, get married, I wonder if they really want to go to a lawyer to do that. Okay. So, okay, so it's not just pessimism about divorce, but there are other legit ups and downs, ebbs and flows of life where it is very helpful that if you're going to be a life partner with somebody, that you marry them. Okay. And I understand there are people who don't want to get married. I remember somebody that I worked with one time. She I don't know how I feel about this. I'm just saying I understand. Okay. Me understanding somebody's situation does not mean I agree with their decisions. Okay. I just saying I understand because I knew this person who was receiving like $3,000 or $4,000 a month in alimony because her ex-husband had brought her here from a third world country and then he divorced her and she didn't have any skills and she couldn't hold a job, and it took her a long time to be able to get to hold a very low level job, which is where I met her. And she was dating somebody, but they weren't going to get married because if they got married they would lose that money. Now if I'm the ex-husband, I'm a little perturbed about that, like you're having your cake and eat it too. But I'm just saying there are some reasons why people don't want to get married that aren't just I want to defraud you. Okay. That said, in this case, let me tell you one of the reasons why. And again, I'm going to try not to go too much into this because this was something that was recent. A lot of times when somebody forwards me a question, like it was a friend of a friend or something like that, normally I age those a little bit. Okay. But this one's fairly recent and I don't want somebody's bestie to get like outed because I gave too many details on their friend's situation. Uh, so in this case, the prospective husband is like, this we'll save so much money in taxes. And I'm like, have you ever heard of the single tax? Like there are people groups that are fighting for the right to be married and considered married under tax law because they feel it's unfair that our current established marriages in most parts of the United States at least are between a man and a woman. And they're like, we want the same tax benefits. We've been together for 12 years. We want the same tax benefits as everybody else. And you find that you don't want to file taxes with your partner. Red flag, red flag, red flag. I'm sure the reason that man doesn't want to file taxes with this young lady is because he don't want her to know what he's got. Okay. Another reason he probably don't want to. Okay, wait. Let me do one thing at a time. One thing at a time, because I'm not down there yet. Okay. So well, I already started saying it. I might as well go ahead and say it. My first my first my first red flag with this when I saw the taxes thing is he's married and he don't want you to see his taxes. He don't want it to be researched in the system to find out that he's married. He got him a whole nother family somewhere else in some other state, in some other country, in some other situation, and he is trying to pull one over on his future fiance. Just the fact that he says, "Oh, I think it's better for us taxes. We'll save so much money in taxes," and then turns around and says, "And I do want you to be a stay-at-home mom. You said you always wanted to do that, and I can make sure that happens." Red flag, red flag, red flag all over. You know what? I should get a red flag. I've got a it's buried because I wasn't planning on using it today. I've got a penalty flag, but I need a red flag. I need a red card. Boom, you're out. You're out. Um, okay. So my thinking, my thinking is he's probably got a family somewhere else. Okay. Or the next thing I thought is that if he applies for marriage, maybe he isn't married right now, but he was married and he hasn't told you that. Okay. Okay. So that's another reason why somebody might want to do this. Okay. Now, the next thing that I want you to think about in this situation. Okay. The next thing you might want to think about in the situation is that he's got some things in his record. He's got some things in his record that are not savory. And when you go apply for a marriage license, that's going to trigger some things. Okay. I don't know if I need to admit this in public, but the government already knows. I have some people in my background who have a little bit of unsavory pasts. And I have people in my family that have some unsavory pasts. And made my security clearance back when I was in the Air Force, made my security clearance investigations take a long time. And guess what people like to do? They like to hide something. And guess what happens if you are a felon and you don't turn yourself in on your regular intervals to your parole officer? Or if you're supposed to be limited to a certain geographic region and you don't do that, or if you're a registered sex offender, but you decide not to register when you move somewhere else, okay? These things all could pop up when he goes in to get application for a marriage license, okay? And so to me, the biggest thing, especially when they mention being a stay-at-home mom, to me, the biggest thing that I think is happening here, if he's not married to somebody else, is probably that he just wants to give her all to, that he thinks she needs to basically become his house manager, um, for the sake of little ears, intimate partner, child rearer, and take care of everything else. Okay, that's what it sounds like. And then once she's trapped and unable to leave, this is where I could admit that I might be a little biased here based on my experience and the experience of many women I know. Once she's trapped in that situation, now the abuse can come. And we'll talk more about financial abuse when we get into Women's History Month next month. But the reality is, for a lot of women, they did not see the financial abuse coming. They did not see the financial abuse coming because it doesn't show up like that. Like, a person who's going to abuse you financially doesn't just show up on date one and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be super nice to you for the next 2 or 3 months. I'm going to make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. I'm going to make you feel like you're so super special. And I'm going to make you feel like nobody else has ever understood me like you do. You must be my soulmate. We shouldn't waste any time. We've been looking for each other all these years. Let's jump in and move in together. Let's jump in and get married quick. Let's jump in and have kids quick. And then as soon as you are attached, or as soon as she is attached, and sometimes it's he that is attached, now the abuse starts. And when the abuse starts, it's a situation of, well, I didn't think that was the real him. I didn't think that was the real her, because the person who courted me was the real him. The person I went out with for 4, 5, 6 months was the real her. No, what you went out with and during that time was a facade. And as soon as they feel like you are sufficiently locked down where it's hard for you to extricate yourself, then the abuse begins. And so that was my big concern when I read this. I did think that, because I've heard of this. Being in the military, I've heard of this where people have had multiple families that didn't know about each other. And y'all, I was TDY and I flew home one time and I met this guy on the plane, and my goodness, we hit it off. We hit it off. We had such a great time. And of course, back then I was single. I looked down to see if there was any ring. Not only was there no ring, there wasn't even one of them ring shadows. You know how when people who are married want to stray, they take off their ring and you got the light skin piece where your wedding band used to be because it's been shaded, it's been shielded from the sun. He didn't even have that. So when I was single, I would always look and make sure there's no evidence of a ring that used to be there yesterday and isn't there today, right? Y'all, he flirted with me, and it was one of those long trips. I think we were coming from overseas or something like that, but it was one of those long trips. We were fellowshipping. We were talking, we were hitting it out, boom, boom, boom. I mean, it had been so rare since I met anybody that I could really converse on that level. Y'all, I was excited. Now, he dampened my excitement. He slowed my roll as we got ready to land, and he said, well, I hate to break this to you, but I'm enlisted and I'm getting ready to retire in about 6 months. So, I hope it's okay if I look you up, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Y'all, we get off the plane. I realized that I never got his contact information. Okay. And I really only had a first name. I didn't even have his whole name. Right. So I go to the baggage claim and I go to look for him. And there he is at the baggage claim, y'all, with the biggest wedding ring I have ever seen. It was like, you ever see one of those big, um, it's called a nut. Okay. I have to be careful. I got a fourth grader boy in the room. It's called a nut. You put it on the bolt, right? It was, wait, let me see if I can do this. It was about that big on his finger. It covered the whole joint between the bottom of his finger and the knuckle. Okay, that's how big it was. Like one of them platinum style, tarnished, dark tarnished, not black metal, but like it's like a antique silver or a platinum style wedding band. It was the biggest wedding band I had ever seen. And I thought to myself, that man has on the biggest wedding band I've ever seen. Let me see what his family looks like. And sure enough, his family come out. He has some older kids, like 10, who had missed dad. For him to have been in that relationship that long and not have a wedding band thing, maybe he worked in maintenance or something where they don't wear their wedding bands that often. But for you to not have any shame or any indication that you were married with kids, y'all, some people, they know exactly what they're doing and they're good at it too. That's why you can't be too careful. You got to look for the red flags. And in this case, my red flags, I did. My first thought was, I wonder if he doesn't want to get married because he doesn't want her to find out that he's got another family somewhere. He's already married to somebody else, and he don't want to divorce her. Right? That was my first thought, and then my second thought was, or this man is financially abusive. Okay, so now if you're in a situation like this, what do you do? Okay, what do you do? Because there's just so few good outcomes. Like, what's another one? I think there's what's another one? Sometimes people don't get married because they want the woman to get the benefits. They want to get certain benefits. And I know we are not going to feed into the stereotype that every single mama is a welfare mama. Okay, most of the people that were getting benefits when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do in $800,000 of debt. They were hardworking people who were just struggling to make it. Okay, so we're not going to go down that road today. But there are people out there that have this, welfare queen myth, and they think, oh, if we just play it up, her parents will be satisfied, she'll be satisfied, and she'll get free money, and that's less work I have to do. You don't want somebody who just wants to put in the minimum effort. Okay, you don't. Okay. And so, because people are something like let's say it's not financial abuse. Let's say he's not married to somebody else. Let's say he's not a felon or some other legal bad thing that he's trying to hide, right? Let's just say he's not cheating. Okay. Let's say he's just risk averse and he don't want to lose the girl, right? What do you really want somebody who's going to only put in the bare minimum, who's just going to placate you enough? I'm gonna challenge this problem that we're having in society. People are always been saying, well, there's not enough good men, there's not enough good men, there's not enough good men. There are good men out there, but no matter what generation we're in, it seems like there's never enough good men. Back when I was younger, it's because men were holding women down and abusing them and not letting them succeed, and they wouldn't let them have careers. And then when I became a young woman, now, it was common, you didn't just go to college to get your MRS degree, although I went to school with several women at the Air Force Academy who were there for their MRS degree. That was still a thing, but it was going out of fashion. But now you have the male loneliness epidemic where all these men apparently can't find women because women want too much out of their man. I mean, every generation has its struggles and it just takes a different shape. And what's taking a different shape isn't a real problem. It's people on both sides of the fence not taking accountability for what it is they want and what it is they're willing to do in a partnership. And a partnership only works if both people are willing to act as partners, which means I'm here for you, you're here for me, and we're in this thing together. Okay. So I'm gonna caution this young lady. You do not want a partner who puts out the bare minimum. Okay. You want a fake church. He wants a fake church wedding. He wants to be a fake husband. Who wants a fake husband? Okay. Who wants a fake husband? Who wants to be pretend married to somebody who's putting all the onus on you to give up your career and do all the things, but yet He has any license he wants to walk away whenever he feels like it. When you have 3 kids and a mortgage you can't pay, you're going to regret that. I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. Don't do it. You, if he is not going to commit to you on paper, I know people don't like to hear this. I know it's old fashioned, but you know what? I'm a pastor. You come on my channel, you're going to get faith and family with finance. You're not going to just make money at any cost. Okay. You got somebody in your life that doesn't want to commit to you with paperwork and marriage and committing themselves, even if you're not a person of faith, committing yourself legally. I would recommend you don't have children with that person. I would recommend you don't commingle funds with that person. I would recommend you don't buy a house with that person. I would recommend you don't buy a car with that person. Now, if they want to buy you a car, put your name on it, that's different. But I would keep those lines very separate. Okay. And I am old fashioned enough to say that I wouldn't even recommend living with that person. Okay. And so now that said, I think it would be hard to do what he really wants to do unless y'all found a fake pastor, because very few churches are going to want to do that. I know mine wouldn't do that because when we do a wedding, you have to sign the marriage paperwork. Okay, so I'm giving you all these things. My biggest thing to the young lady in this situation and her friend who sent me this is you want to get yourself out of that situation as quickly as you can. Even if this guy is well intentioned but just foolish, because he might be well intentioned, but he might be 22, 23. I don't have the ages of who these people are, but they sound kind of young. Okay, he might be 22 or 23. Now, wait a second. If she's 22 or 23 and he's 35, boom, 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 another red flag. Okay, just cut it off. Okay, but if you think he might honestly be well intentioned but just ill informed or a little foolish, or he's read too many alpha male websites or something like that, I'm not saying kick them to the curb right away, but I would say put some boundaries in place. If you're living together, move out. If you're commingled funds, stop it. If you're doing things that would lead to children, protect yourself and perhaps back off a little bit because you don't want a fake marriage. You don't want a fake husband. Okay. Those are my recommendations. And some of those things are harder said than, or some of those things are easier said than done, but you can start taking action today. And the cool thing about taking action is even when it takes a while for you to actually do the things you need to do, just the fact that you have an action plan helps you have more confidence and helps you have more strength and helps you hold your head up higher and helps you have much more gumption in your life. And that spills over your energy, the energy that it brings to have a plan for your future spills over into the rest of your life. And the next thing you know, he's feeling that energy. Other people around you are feeling that energy. And then now they are approaching you differently. And so you might actually find that when you start walking in the energy of I'm going to take care of myself and I'm going to protect my future, and my future doesn't include a fake husband, even if you're on the same lease and it's 6 months before you can get out of it, and you're starting to save up your money and you're starting to look for other places, you're starting to reach out and find out if you can room with somebody, rent a room, or go move back home or whatever it is. Once that energy comes out, you might find that he decides to move on to somebody who's an easier target. Because I don't see any good that comes out of this situation, and I would advise you to get out of it sooner rather than later. If you are listening to me live, I do encourage you to still listen to the podcast every once in a while. Wait, this is going to sound bad. You already heard it once, so I want you to hear it a second time. No, that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say is, if you're listening to if you're listening to me as part of the podcast, we encourage you to join us live. I don't want you to not listen to the podcast because I need you to bump up my podcast ratings, right? And I need you to forward it to some friends and I need you to tell people about it. But one of the things that I most enjoy doing with my subscribers is actually getting to interact with you live. And so that's so much fun. And we are going to eventually get back to where we're doing interviews again. We're already starting to line those interviews up. And when we do that, some of the Thursday night classes aren't going to be ported to the podcast. So you definitely want to participate in both if you're part of the JJ Conway tribe. I don't know what we're going to call that tribe, but we're going to come up with a name for it. All right. Y'all take care and be blessed. Don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and ask your question at ladiesofwealth.com.